Envy is a silent poison. It doesn't make noise like a scream or slam like a door, but it slips into gestures, into awkward silences, into those looks that seem affectionate yet hide an invisible edge. Have you noticed that sometimes it isn't the distant enemy who can hurt you most, but someone close to you? Even someone you've given affection, time, or even sacrificed for. That's what hurts the most, when the thorn doesn't come from outside, but from your own garden. I'm Gabriel, and I've spent more than 15 years studying and practicing Stoicism as a way of life. I've helped hundreds of people in different parts of the world face not only external adversity, but that inner storm that comes from discovering that someone close harbors resentment or looks at us with envy. I know what that wound feels like because it doesn't show at first glance, because it arrives disguised as advice, as silence, as an innocent joke, and precisely for that reason, it tends to confuse and wear you down more than a direct attack. In this talk, I want to walk with you, calmly and in depth, through 11 clear signs that reveal when someone close to you carries envy or hidden resentment. We won't stay on the surface. We'll go to the depths, to the emotional, philosophical, and spiritual roots of each sign, so that you not only learn to identify them, but also to face them with serenity, self-respect, and dignity. Not with fear or anger, but with the wisdom of someone who understands that inner peace is non-negotiable. Let's begin. Number 1, they go silent when things go well for you. When you share good news, you expect at least some gesture of joy from the other person. It could be a genuine smile, a "that's wonderful, you deserve it," or even just a simple hug. But sometimes what you get instead is a cold silence, a sudden change of subject, or a look that seems lost anywhere but on you. That silence, believe me, speaks louder than 1,000 words. It's the mark of someone who can't celebrate with you because inside they're unsettled by comparison, envy, or resentment. And the strange thing is, they don't need to say anything hurtful. The emptiness they leave is enough for you to feel it in your gut. I remember a very specific moment in my life. I had achieved an important goal that took me years of effort. I shared it at a family dinner, hoping for at least some recognition. But the only sound was silverware clinking against plates. Nobody said anything. Nobody. In that moment, I understood that silence can be as heavy as a rock on your chest. And what hurt most wasn't the lack of words, but realizing what that silence revealed. That my joy made others uncomfortable. Psychology calls this selective indifference. It's when someone, consciously or not, decides to strip you of importance because they can't stand to see you shine. It's not that they didn't hear you, it's that they refuse to offer even a single applause. From the Stoic perspective, Epictetus taught us to remember that we don't control other people's reactions, only our own. You can't force anyone to feel happy for you, but you can decide how to interpret that silence, either as personal rejection or as a mirror reflecting the other person's inability to deal with their own internal comparisons. Picture a theater. You're on stage sharing your achievement, and the audience sits in complete silence. What do? Do you step off the stage feeling guilty for shining? Or do you continue your performance because you're not acting for applause, but because you have something valuable to express? That metaphor helped me understand that not all silence is contempt. Sometimes it's simply someone else's inability to join in. I want to propose a practical exercise. Recall the last 3 times you shared something good in your life. Look at the reactions. Who truly rejoiced with details and questions? Who just gave a quick, "Oh, that's nice," and who didn't say a single word? It's a simple inventory, but it gives you clarity to recognize where there is genuine affection and where envy is hiding in disguise. This isn't about labeling harshly, but about seeing clearly so you're not caught off guard again. The important thing is not to go searching for excuses. Don't say, "Maybe they were distracted," or "Maybe they didn't hear me." When silence repeats itself as a pattern, it's a message. And though you can't change it, you can learn not to take it as a personal offense. That's the discipline of perception, seeing things as they are, without embellishment, without self-deception, without drama. I want to close this point with a phrase I repeat to myself when I feel that emptiness. Someone else's silence does not dim my light. The lack of words doesn't erase your effort, doesn't strip away your worth, doesn't take from what you've built. All it does is expose the other person's inner chains. And you weren't put on this earth to shrink so someone else won't feel small. You were meant to live fully, and if someone can't applaud, let them stay silent. Your task is to keep shining. Number 2, they belittle you and change the subject. There's something curious about people who harbor envy. They rarely attack directly. They do it with phrases disguised as normal comments. You share that you achieved something important, and the response is, anyone could do that, or it's not such a big deal. And just like that, they quickly steer the conversation back to themselves, their problems, or their accomplishments, as if your achievement were just an irrelevant parenthesis in the discussion. That swift move of downplaying you and placing themselves in the spotlight is one of the clearest signs of hidden resentment. It happened to me once at a gathering with childhood friends. I shared enthusiastically that I had finally finished a project I'd been putting off for years. One of them replied, "My cousin did that in a month, it's no big deal." And in less than 10 seconds, he was already talking about his home renovation. I remember staring into my coffee cup and thinking, interesting. He couldn't even give me a minute to celebrate. He needed to turn the spotlight back on himself. That was the moment I realized those kinds of remarks don't speak about my achievements, but about their insecurities. Psychology calls this devaluation, an ego defense mechanism to avoid feeling inferior. Instead of facing the discomfort of comparing themselves to you, the person would rather pull you down to their imaginary level. Here, Stoicism is clear. Marcus Aurelius said that what others think of you does not touch your essence unless you give it that power. The trap is taking the bait, arguing, justifying, or trying to convince the other person of your merit. That only feeds the dynamic of competition. Think of a tennis match. You just made a great serve, and the other player, instead of acknowledging it, changes the rules and says, "That doesn't count. It wasn't that good." What sense would it make to argue? You know it was a good serve. The internal judges, your conscience, your effort, your truth already validated it. You don't need the other's confirmation. The problem is that, in daily life, we forget this principle and go looking for applause where it doesn't exist. One practical technique I learned is the short response. When someone minimizes me, instead of justifying myself, I simply say, "I'm glad I achieved it." Period. I don't go into explanations, I don't compete, I don't give them the satisfaction of seeing they got to me. It's like building an invisible wall that ends the game without fighting. Later, when they change the subject, I also adjust the level of emotional access I give that person, because someone who doesn't know how to celebrate with you doesn't deserve that much access to your vulnerability. Now I want to ask you, how many times in your life have you felt that when you share something good, someone cuts your wings with a quick remark? And how many times did you stay there justifying yourself, trying to make them understand how valuable it was for you? If you think about it, it wasn't necessary. The most important recognition will always be your own. Stoicism teaches that true strength lies in not begging for validation. Because if your peace depends on others recognizing you, you become a slave to their moods. And by now, you already know that emotional slavery is no path for anyone. I'll end this point with one clear idea. Don't lower yourself to explain your light to someone intent on dimming it. The person who changes the subject in the face of your joy only reveals their limitation. Yours is to keep growing without expecting everyone to applaud. Because your life isn't measured in applause, but in the intimate satisfaction of having walked your own path. Number 3, they give you advice that holds you back. Here we step onto slippery ground because at first glance it seems like that person is looking out for you. You share a plan, a project, a dream, and their response is, "If I were you, I wouldn't take the risk. You're too old for that." Or, "Better stay as you are, you might lose everything." Behind that facade of caution often hides something darker, the wish that you don't move forward, that you don't push past your limits, because that would force them to confront their own. I lived this firsthand. A few years ago, I decided to study a new discipline, something I'd always left pending. When I told someone close to me, their response was almost instant. "What for? At your age, it doesn't make sense anymore. Better just rest." That phrase hit me harder than I expected. For days, I kept wondering if they were right, if it was absurd to even try. And then I realized those warnings weren't born of genuine care, but of someone else's fear disguised as advice. Psychology calls this a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you accept that disguised poison, you end up acting according to the brake they placed on you. And the worst part is, you convince yourself it was your decision. From the Stoic perspective, the key is to apply what I call the intention filter. Before following advice, ask yourself 3 questions. Does this give me strength or take it away? Does it come from love or from fear? Does it push me to grow or trap me in the familiar? If 2 answers lean negative, you already have your answer. It's not advice, it's sabotage. Picture an old master on a mountain. A student arrives, eager to climb higher, and the master says, "Don't try, you might get tired." What kind of teaching would that be? A true guide doesn't clip your wings. They warn you of risks, yes, but also give you tools to face them. That's the difference between advice that protects and advice that holds you back. And here, I like to add a bit of humor. Isn't it funny that so many who say, "If I were you, I wouldn't do it," have never once been in your place? They speak from the safety of the shore, advising the one who dares to swim. Sometimes you just have to laugh at that irony so it doesn't weigh more than it should. I want to propose an exercise. The next time you get a piece of advice that feels like it's holding you back, don't respond right away. Breathe and examine it closely. Ask yourself whether that person usually celebrates your progress or whether they fear your changes. Become aware of that pattern and decide from your freedom, not from the voice of fear. And let me take this moment to ask you for something special. If up to this point you feel these words are helping you see things that were once hidden, subscribe to the channel, hit like, and tell me in the comments which country you're listening from. I love knowing where this community of wisdom seekers is walking from, because it reminds us we're not alone on this journey. I'll close this section with a phrase I keep as a talisman. Don't confuse caution with resignation. Advice born of love makes you stronger. Advice born of envy ties you down. And you know this. You didn't come to this stage of your life to shrink, but to expand. Number 4, they rejoice in your stumbles. There's something cruel about this sign. Not everyone celebrates your victories, but some people enjoy your defeats. You notice it in that strange spark in their eyes when you share that something didn't go as planned, or in the quick, "I told you so," they throw out the moment you slip. Sometimes it even shows in a smile, disguised as a joke, but you feel it as a low blow. It's hard to accept, but there are people close to you who, unable to grow on their own, breathe easier when you fall, because your stumble reminds them you're not that far ahead of them. The Bible gives us a clear warning in Proverbs 24:17. Do not gloat when your enemy falls. When they stumble, do not let your heart rejoice. It's a reminder that finding joy in someone else's misfortune reveals more darkness in the one who celebrates than in the one who stumbles. And even if that person isn't your declared enemy, their reaction exposes them. Envy always seeks to level the ground. If they can't rise, they'd rather see you come down. Stoicism offers another perspective: temperance. If someone rejoices at your stumble, your challenge is not to prove anything to them, but to maintain your calm. Marcus Aurelius reminded us that the best revenge is not to resemble the one who wronged you. You don't need to respond with anger or sink under the weight of it. Your serenity is already a victory. Imagine tripping on the street and scraping your knee. Someone comes up, not to help you, but to say, "That's what you get for not looking." That person has no power to increase your pain. The real pain is in the wound. The rest is just noise. That's how the reactions of those who enjoy your falls work. Noise trying to slip into your hurt. But the choice to give it weight is yours. I want to propose a personal protocol for these moments. First, acknowledge your stumble with humility, without denying it or dramatizing it. Second, be mindful of whom you share your failures with, because not everyone deserves access to your vulnerability. And third, don't over-explain. A simple phrase like, "I made a mistake, but I'm still learning," is enough for you and a wall for them. Let me ask you, have you ever felt that someone close to you was relieved by your difficulties? If the answer is yes, then you know that's not friendship or love. It's hidden poison. Don't take it as proof of your weakness, but as a revelation of theirs. I'll close this point with a simple idea. Every stumble is a lesson, not a show. The one who celebrates your falls exposes themselves, not you. You decide whether that fall will be a reason to give up or another step toward your strength. And if someone smiles when you fall, let that smile be proof that your light is so strong they can't bear it. Number 5, they talk about you behind your back. There's no poison more subtle than twisted words spoken when you're not around. To your face, everything may seem cordial, even kind. But the moment you leave the room, your name becomes currency in other people's conversations. This isn't just harmless gossip. When someone envies you or holds resentment, what they're really trying to do is plant doubts about you, slowly eroding your reputation. It's like drops of water on a stone, at first unnoticed, but over time, it wears it down. The strangest part is that you eventually find out. There's always someone who comes to tell you, with phrases dressed up as good intentions, "Look, I don't want to get involved, but so-and-so said this about you." And that's when you discover what you already suspected. The friendly face you were getting was just a mask. I lived this with someone very close. To me, they acted like an ally, but in another circle, they dropped hints that I was arrogant. When I found out, I wasn't surprised. I had already felt that invisible discomfort in our conversations. The rumor didn't hurt as much as the confirmation that the double face was real. Psychology calls this triangulation. When someone doesn't dare confront you directly, they look for third parties to unload their venom. And they do it because envy needs accomplices. On its own, it withers. It's a mechanism of belonging. They gain approval from others at the cost of your name. In reality, they're not talking about you. They're talking about their own need to be validated. Here, I like to remember a verse that always makes me stay alert. Psalm 34:13. Keep your tongue from evil and your lips from telling lies. The Bible reminds us that words have the power to build or destroy, and the one who uses them to harm is poisoning themselves first. From a Stoic perspective, Seneca said that those who speak ill of you in your absence reveal more about themselves than about you. It's like a vendor in the marketplace offering rotten fruit. You don't need to buy it. I like that metaphor because it helps me see rumors as low-quality goods. The mistake would be to accept them and carry them with you. I want to propose a practical exercise. Make a small mental map. Recall who usually brings you comments from others and ask yourself why they always come to you with those phrases. Then identify who you grant access to your personal matters. You'll realize that often we're far too generous with intimate information. Learning to choose who you share with isn't distrust, it's wisdom. Let me ask you, how many times have you heard something said about you and felt that the person would never have said it to your face? That feeling isn't paranoia, it's intuition. And intuition rarely fails in these cases. I'll close this point with a clear phrase. What they say behind your back speaks of where they are, not where you are. Don't waste your energy cleaning your name in every corner. Live in such a way that even if they talk, your life disproves every twisted word. Because in the end, the truth always finds its way. Number 6, they compete with you and copy you. Envy plays a curious game. First, it sees you as a rival, then as a model. That person turns anything into a competition, from something as trivial as who cooks better to deeper achievements like your independence, your calmness, or your relationships. And the strange part is that, while criticizing you, they end up copying what you do, your habits, even your way of speaking. That mix of rivalry and imitation is a clear sign of admiration tainted with resentment. I've seen it many times. I remember a neighbor who watched me with a certain coldness. Every time I made a change in my garden, within days she would replicate it. Same plant, same pot, same arrangement. At first I thought it was coincidence, but over time I realized it was a form of silent competition. She couldn't celebrate my initiative, but she also couldn't resist the urge to copy it, as if that way she could steal away my originality. And that's what envy does. Unable to create, yet eager to imitate so it won't fall behind. Psychology explains this as social comparison. When someone feels insecure next to you, they need to level the field. If they can't surpass you, they at least try to resemble you. And when they succeed, even superficially, they feel temporary relief, as if by imitating you, they steal a piece of your identity. But here's the trap. They're never satisfied, because what they copy is the form, not the substance. Stoicism invites us to remember that true competition should only be with yourself. Epictetus put it another way. Don't compare yourself to others, compete with your own nature. I keep that phrase engraved in my mind because it reminds me that the only valid race is the one I run within myself. When someone copies or competes with me, I don't need to play along. They can keep running in circles. I'll keep moving forward on my own path. Picture a serene lake. Someone places a mirror of water beside it and believes they now have the same landscape. But that mirror isn't the lake. It's only a reflection. That's what imitators are like. They reproduce the form, but never capture the essence. That metaphor helps me smile whenever I notice someone trying to replicate what I do. I want to suggest a re-anchoring exercise. The next time you feel someone competing with you or copying you, instead of getting upset, ask yourself, what am I doing so well that others feel the need to replicate it? That shifts your perspective from irritation to recognition. Then, refocus on your purpose, on what you truly want to achieve, because in that space, no one can compete. In your personal mission, you are unique and unrepeatable. Let me ask you, has it ever happened that a relative, a friend, or even a child imitates you in something, but instead of appreciating you, they seem to want to strip you of the credit? If you've experienced it, you already know the uncomfortable feeling of being both rival and teacher at the same time. Understanding this sets you free because you see the problem isn't yours. It belongs to the one who can't find their own voice. I'll close this point with a thought that gives me peace. Let them copy me if they want. My essence can't be imitated. External competition is passing noise. Your true victory lies in staying faithful to yourself, without slowing down or losing your direction because of the shadow of those who can't walk without glancing sideways at you. Number 7, they leave you out of plans. Exclusion hurts because it isn't noise, it's absence. You find out there was a family dinner, a gathering of friends, an important decision, and no one told you. Or worse, they let you know at the very last minute, as if it were just an act of courtesy. That omission isn't accidental. It's a message. We don't want you included. And when that signal repeats, it reveals resentment disguised as forgetfulness. I remember a very clear incident. Someone close invited me to a gathering just 2 hours before it started. And it wasn't by chance. The others had known for weeks. It was an invitation to fulfill an obligation, not to include me. I went anyway, more out of curiosity than desire, and the tension in the air was so obvious that I confirmed what I already knew. It hadn't been a mistake, it had been a decision. Selective exclusion is a silent but effective weapon to make you feel small. Psychology calls this ostracism, the strategy of pushing someone aside to undermine their self-esteem. And it's devastating because it triggers a deeply human fear, the fear of not belonging. In later life, this becomes even more delicate, as many people carry the fear of being left alone, of becoming a burden, of no longer being needed. That's why exclusion often hurts more than an argument. It reminds you of that deep fear. The Bible also points to this in Ecclesiastes 4:4. I saw that all toil and all achievement spring from one person's envy of another. Many times exclusion doesn't happen because you're unbearable or difficult, but because your life, your strength, or your serenity stir up discomfort in others, discomfort they prefer to remove by shutting you out. From the Stoic perspective, the key is to remember that your worth doesn't depend on being at every table. Marcus Aurelius put it calmly, if you're not invited, be grateful you're not tied to that banquet. Self-love begins when you understand that you don't need to beg for a place where there's no genuine affection. I want to suggest a visual exercise. Imagine your life as a house with a door and a key. You decide who gets to come in, who you invite into the living room, and who stays outside. If someone excludes you, what they're really doing is giving you the chance to evaluate whether they deserve a copy of your key. Sometimes exclusion, though painful, is a blessing in disguise. Let me ask you, have you ever found out about a family or social plan only after it already happened and felt that emptiness in your chest? That feeling isn't paranoia or exaggeration, it's the mark of deliberate exclusion. And recognizing it frees you because you understand it's not in your control. I'll close this point with a phrase that helps me in my own exclusions. The one who excludes me loses my presence. I lose nothing. Your dignity is non-negotiable, and even if it hurts not to be at every table, remember that your inner table, the one set with peace and serenity, is always there. And at that table, your company never fails. Number 8, they don't respect your boundaries. Few things reveal hidden resentment more clearly than the inability to accept a no. When someone envies you or holds resentment, your autonomy becomes a threat. You say, "I can't, I don't want to, it's not good for me," and immediately come the pressure, the guilt, or the emotional manipulation. It's not just that they don't accept your decision, they feel offended because you didn't yield to their control. And that's when what's really behind it comes to light. This happened to me some years ago with someone who insisted I help with a personal matter. I calmly explained that I couldn't, that it wasn't in my hands. Their response was, "Of course, now that you think you're more important, you don't have time for others." That phrase carried hidden envy. It wasn't about my availability, it was about their inability to tolerate my boundary. I understood it late, but it became one of my most valuable lessons. Anyone who doesn't respect your no doesn't respect your dignity. Psychology describes this in Cartman's well-known drama triangle: victim, persecutor, and rescuer. Someone who envies you often shifts between these roles. If you set a boundary, they switch from victim, "You're abandoning me," to persecutor, "You're selfish." Or they try to make you feel guilty so you'll give in. It's a game that only works if you step into the dynamic. Stoicism offers another path. Stay outside the triangle, respond with fairness and strength, and remember that setting a boundary isn't cruelty. It's self-respect. Imagine your life as a walled garden. You decide what to plant, when to water, and whom to invite inside. A boundary is the fence that protects that space. You don't argue with someone kicking at the fence. There's no point. You simply repair it and keep it strong. That's how the no's you uphold work. They're not walls against love, but barriers against abuse. I want to suggest a practical exercise. Prepare 4 short phrases for when you need to say no. They can be as simple as, "Not now," "That doesn't work for me," "I'd rather not," or "This isn't the moment." And practice saying them out loud so that when pressure comes, your mind won't invent excuses or sugarcoat it. Because every extra explanation opens the door to debate, and your boundary doesn't need to be negotiated. Let me ask you, how many times have you said yes, knowing deep down you wanted to say no, just to avoid discomfort? And how did you feel afterward? That sense of exhaustion and resentment toward yourself is proof that giving in at the cost of your peace is never a good idea. I'll close this point with a thought I always carry with me. Whoever is offended by my boundary has already revealed their true intention. Respect is not begged for. It's upheld with the calm firmness of someone who knows their life is not meant to be controlled by another's will. And though some may disguise it as affection, the lack of respect for your limits is a form of resentment in disguise. Your duty is not to explain it, but to stand by it. Number 9, jokes that hurt. Nothing unmasks envy better than that seemingly light phrase, "It was just a joke." You hear it after a comment about your age, your appearance, your decisions, or even your way of living. And while everyone around bursts into laughter, you feel the sting in your chest, because you know it wasn't innocent humor. It was a needle disguised as a joke. That's hidden aggression. It hides behind laughter so that if you respond, you're labeled too sensitive. I remember a birthday I attended years ago. Between gifts and toasts, someone said out loud, "Why so many candles? Looks more like a fire already." Everyone laughed. I forced a smile too, but inside I felt ridiculed. In the end, I understood that phrase wasn't about celebrating my life, but mocking my age. That day, I decided never again to stay silent in front of jokes that hurt. Because if I learned one thing, it's this: what you tolerate repeats. Psychology calls these microaggressions. Small, seemingly harmless comments that carry heavy emotional weight because they repeat over time. And envy uses them precisely to chip away at you without ever confronting you directly. It's a blow disguised as a pat on the back. Stoicism reminds us that no one can offend us without our consent, but that doesn't mean staying silent. It means choosing how to respond. One technique I use is the mirror, calmly returning a question. If someone says, "I was only joking," you can respond with serenity. "Interesting. What part was funny to you?" That simple reflection makes them more uncomfortable than shouting ever could, because it exposes the hidden intention without you losing your composure. Imagine a beautiful cake. Suddenly, someone sticks a pin in it, invisible at first glance. The one serving smiles, but you know that biting into it will hurt. That's what these jokes are like. Sweet on the outside, sharp on the inside. The key is not to swallow the whole cake just to be polite. I want to suggest a small exercise. Think of a short phrase you can use as a boundary whenever someone makes that kind of joke. It can be as simple as, "I don't find that funny," or "I'd rather you not joke about that." Practice it in your mind. The next time it happens, you won't be reacting from the wound, but responding from clarity. Let me ask you, how many times in your life have you laughed out of obligation at a joke that actually hurt you? That forced laughter is a burden, because not only do you endure the mockery, you also validate it. And you deserve better. You deserve respect. I'll close this point with a phrase I often repeat to myself. Humor that hurts isn't humor, it's poison. Don't normalize jokes that diminish your worth. Someone who truly values you doesn't use laughter to wound you, but to share joy, and you have the right to demand that difference. Number 10, they only look for you out of convenience. Some connections may look like affection, but in reality, they're disguised transactions. That person isn't with you because they enjoy your company, but because they get something out of it. Favors, money, contacts, your time, your listening ear. And the sign is clear. They show up when they need something and vanish when you're the one in need. It's the ATM friendship. Insert the card, withdraw what you want, and leave. I remember someone who always called me in a rush. It was never to chat. There was always a problem I had to solve. But the day I was the one who reached out for support, they didn't answer. Not even a callback. That imbalance opened my eyes. It wasn't friendship, it was use. And the strange thing is, when you realize it, it's not losing the relationship that hurts. It's accepting that it was never real. Psychology explains this through social exchange theory. All relationships involve some degree of give and take, but when the balance breaks and you're the one always giving without receiving, it becomes emotional exploitation. And often, envy is at the root. They can't stand your independence, but they don't want to lose the benefits of having you close. Here, I like to bring in a verse that illustrates it well. Proverbs 19:4. Wealth brings many friends, but the poor are deserted by theirs. It's not just about money. It's about any resource they want from you. As long as you have it, they seek you out. When you don't, they disappear. That's the clearest proof it wasn't love, but self-interest. From the Stoic perspective, the answer isn't to become cold and distrustful, but to learn how to measure reciprocity without resentment. Marcus Aurelius said that the value of a relationship is measured by what it adds to your soul, not by what it drains. If someone only takes, they don't enrich you, they empty you. And your duty is to protect your well. Picture a merchant who only comes to your house during harvest season. As long as your orchard has fruit, he smiles and flatters you, but the moment the land rests, he disappears. Is that really a friend, or just a disguised customer? That image helps to see clearly where there's genuine connection and where there's manipulation. I want to propose a simple test. For 3 weeks, observe who reaches out to you and why. Write down whether they seek you only in times of need or also in neutral, everyday moments. That record will give you more clarity than 1,000 words. And once you see who they are, there's no need to confront them with anger. just reduce your emotional investment in those ties. Let me ask you, how many times have you noticed that someone showed up in your life only when they needed something? And how many times did you give in anyway, just to avoid feeling like a bad person? That guilt is unnecessary. Giving out of love is a virtue. Giving out of manipulation is slavery. I'll close this point with a thought I want you to keep. Whoever seeks me only for convenience never truly finds me as a person. Because you are much more than what you give. You are companionship, experience, wisdom, and presence. And anyone who can't value that doesn't deserve your time. Number 11. They compare you to put you down. Comparison is a silent but devastating weapon. They don't attack you directly, but drop phrases that place you in second place. Look how your sister managed. So-and-so's kids already have this. At your age, I was doing much better. It doesn't matter who the reference point is, a neighbor, a relative, even a stranger. The message is always the same. You don't measure up. And behind that habit, there isn't love, but resentment disguised as an example. This tends to hurt most when it comes from your own family. Many mothers or fathers have heard cutting words from their adult children. My friend has a cooler mom than you, or so-and-so's dad is way more generous. These aren't just words. They're daggers meant to diminish your worth, often because there's hidden envy toward your independence or the way you keep going despite difficulties. And while it hurts, recognizing it as a sign of resentment helps you not to swallow the guilt. Psychology calls this downward and upward social comparison. Someone who envies you needs to place you lower on their imaginary scale to feel higher. And if they can't do it with their own achievements, they try with words, putting you next to someone who, in their view, is better. But the truth is that measure is never objective. It's always tainted by their insecurity. I remember a moment in my own life. Someone once told me in a casual tone, "I don't know why you do that. You should learn from so-and-so, who's truly successful." In that instant, I bit my tongue to avoid replying with sarcasm. Over time, I realized that comparison said nothing about me, but shouted plenty about their frustration. That was my lesson. Not every comment deserves a response. Some only deserve silence. From the Stoic lens, the remedy is to shield your identity. Socrates said that the unexamined life is not worth living. I would add, the compared life isn't either, because every time you accept those phrases as a true measure, you lose a piece of your peace. You're not less than anyone. You're you, with your own battles and unique victories. I want to suggest a small Socratic dialogue exercise. The next time someone compares you, instead of justifying yourself, calmly ask, "And what does that comparison do for you?" That question doesn't aim to humiliate, but to hand responsibility back to the other person. You'd be surprised how often the silence that follows reveals more than 1,000 explanations. Let me ask you, how many times have you felt diminished by an unfair comparison? And how many of those times did you end up doubting yourself? It's natural to feel the sting, but you don't have to carry it. Recognizing the intent behind it is already freeing. I'll close this point with an affirmation I want you to make your own. My worth is not measured against anyone. Repeat that phrase as a shield every time someone tries to put you down. Because while they waste themselves measuring other people's lives, you choose to live yours with dignity and fullness. We've walked together through 11 signs that, though uncomfortable, are revealing. From silences heavier than 1,000 words, to jokes that cut, from unfair comparisons to exclusions and advice that are really disguised restraints. And though each sign hurts in a different way, they all point to the same truth. Envy and resentment don't always come from afar. Often they're far too close. The point isn't to live distrusting everyone, but to learn to see clearly. Because once you identify these behaviors, you stop blaming yourself and understand it's not about your worth, but about the shadows others carry. Stoic wisdom reminds us that we can't control someone else's tongue or heart, but we can protect our perception and choose not to hand over our peace. That's the key. Never negotiate your tranquility for other people's noise. Today, you take with you 11 mirrors to look at your relationships with new eyes. But the essential thing to remember is this: your dignity, your self-respect, and your serenity don't depend on applause, but on your own recognition. And once you're clear about who you are, neither silence, nor jokes, nor comparisons can uproot that truth. Thank you for making it here, for staying until the end of this talk in the Stoic Garden. I'm Gabriel, and this channel exists to remind you that wisdom, serenity, and self-respect are possible at any age, especially now when life becomes more yours than ever. I want to ask you something special. Tell me in the comments which country you're connecting from, so we can see how this wonderful community of truth seekers is growing around the world. And write down this powerful phrase that sums up today's lesson: I live with wisdom. Let those words be your seal. Share this video with a friend, a sister, or someone close, because we never know when a reflection might be the relief someone else is needing. I thank you wholeheartedly for joining me, and remember, right now you'll see 2 more videos on screen that will surely be of interest to you. Choose one and keep walking this path of practical wisdom with me, so that each day you live with more calm, strength, and self-respect.